Hi guys, this is Donna with Love Rocks, and we're back this week with a new rock. This one's for Easter. This is an Easter rabbit version of a gnome. And before we get into the rock, if you're new to the channel, remember this rock will be given away free in a drawing in about 10 days. So during that time, if you subscribe and you comment below this video, you will automatically be put into that drawing. So let's get started on this rock. I wanted to do something fun, I wanted to do something easy, and I wanted to do something that was relatively fast for people to do, but I wanted it for Easter, and this is what I came up with. Now this particular gnome came from an idea I got from a stuffed animal that I saw in one of the local stores. And I thought, I can take that rabbit and I could make him into a gnome, or at least a version of that gnome, so that we can, we'd have something just a little bit different for Easter. I wanted to keep it simple because a lot of the rocks that I do are difficult to do if you don't have a lot of experience in like drawing or shading. This one is so simple to do, very easy to do. You can do lots of these if you're going to do hiding rocks. It's something that a beginner or intermediate could do with ease. So the rock I picked out was fairly dark. I did that on purpose because I wanted to be able to really have those whites and pinks and those pastels jump out. So I picked this rock, and it's, I would say it's fairly light or smooth on the surface. When you're getting rocks and not making them yourself, when you're just going out there and getting river rocks, you take what you can find and you really try to do the best you can with getting the smoothest rocks. But sometimes that just doesn't happen. And this one had some deviation in it, and you'll notice that there's some white spots on this rock, and that's actually part of the rock. We have a lot of lava fields around here, and I don't know if that's other pieces of rock that got picked up in it when it was being made, however long ago that was, but it was, those are pieces of the rock. And so with it being so dark, I did opt to use my chalk pencil instead of a regular pencil. I attempted it at first, but you couldn't see it. So I moved over to the chalk pencil and just did a quick little sketch of these rabbit ears with a little hat, and then we're gonna put in the beard and the whiskers. So if you need to, stop this video and go ahead and sketch in on your rock what you're going to put on. And this is a fairly large rock. Again, I wanted this to be something that anybody could pick up and do. I didn't want to do some little teeny tiny thing with all this intricate detail for this particular rock. I wanted to do something that would be fun and easy. This is something that you can do in a matter of an hour. It's also something that you can do with friends, with family, with kids. The sky's the limit on this one. You can change the colors of the hat, of course, but for the most part, he's just a simple little gnome. So with whiskers. So please, I really, really hope that you guys take the time to try this one, because he really is fun. And there's so many deviations that you could do with this one to make it different or make it your own. So we're going to start with outlining those ears and putting in that white so that we make sure and get that where we want it, and we get that flipped edge of his ear laying down. And you're going to do that on both sides, which is fairly simple. I used very few colors on this one. I used the Wicker white on the ears. The pink on the inside is baby pink when we get to that point. And then for the nose, I used my normal colors of baby white, camel, a little bit of, I used Cardinal red on this one. So a little bit of Cardinal red. And then, of course, the white to do the highlight up on the top of the nose. To do the darker areas of the hat where it kind of bends, I did put the Cardinal red in with some of that baby pink, and that's how I pulled that in. And then matte black. I used the matte black, and it's in his the little beard part. I used it in the little bit on the whiskers. I used it for a little bit of lining, a little bit of shading, and I think that's about it. Yeah. So when you're putting colors, lighter colors on a dark rock like this, you've really got to take the time to get a couple of layers, because one layer, as you can see, is not going to be enough. That's not going to, it's not going to make it, you're going to be able to see too much of that rock through it. So just remember that as you're working on this. Now, because I was going to put the pink over the white for the inside of the ears, I didn't have to worry too much about getting a double layer of that white, but I will go back and I will put some more white in there. You'll see. And of course, again, when you're working with a natural rock, you're going to have those dips and those crevices. You've got to go back and make sure that all of those hold enough paint that it doesn't, you don't have like little bubbles that pop and you can see the color of the rock through it. One of the advantages to making your own rocks with forms, with your silicone forms, is that you don't get all those deviations. You get a nice, soft, perfect surface every time. I've never made them. I have thought about it, because there are times when you do, get a little bit frustrated when you're doing, especially when you're doing detail, when you're doing very fine line detail, and you've got a rock that's got a crevice or a bump or a spot in it, right where your detail's gonna go, and it messes with how you're gonna put in those lines. And so sometimes it does get frustrating. So I don't know, if I decide to start doing those, I'll make sure and do a video on that and show you. I've kind of thought about it quite a bit throughout the year and a half that I've had this channel, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. I love to have the natural rock showing through. I love to have that natural rock showing behind my my pictures. It makes it, to me, it feels, I don't know, authentic or special. Like it's a one of a kind. So when that rock is given away to one of the people drawn, you have a rock that nobody else is ever going to be able to have, because you have a one-of-a-kind rock with a one-of-a-kind painting on it. So I've kind of deviated away from it. But if you do your own pours, comment below and tell me, you know, what you use and why you like it or why you don't like certain parts of it. Because I am starting to think a little bit about doing some molds and some pours. And I'd love to hear back from you guys. Now it's really important when you're doing those folds on the ear to make sure that you get the fold in. You know exactly where that fold's going to be, but also to shade underneath that fold. So as you can tell right here, there's no shading under it, and how it doesn't look right. But once you start shading underneath that, and then you put in a really good heavy, I don't want to call it heavy, a dark but thin line that really makes it stand out away from those colors in the background, which would be the ear behind that fold, that's when it's really going to take shape for you. That's when it starts showing depth. That's when you start seeing, you know, something in front of something else. And it gives you that illusion that that ear is behind that fold. So that's what you're looking for. And no matter what, just keep reminding yourself that the tops of that ear is where the light's going to be. So the very top of that fold is going to be the lighter part of the whole ear. Now, here's a little trick. When you're doing this and you're putting in these lines, you put in you want a really thin line right there along the fold of the ear, correct? So you put that in, and it's never going to be as thin as you want it. Let it dry, and then you can go back and you can paint next to it with a different color, and it'll take it away. Specifically on this one, because that fold went around and that edge is got a roundness to it, instead of waiting for it to completely dry to put a color next to it to thin out that line, I blended it. So let it dry to where it's almost tacky, then go back in and you can blend that line right there, so that you wind up with a dark edge along the very bottom, but you have blending around the edge coming up over that ear. I hope that makes sense. And then that way you've got the light on the very top, and then as it's coming down around that folded ear, it's getting darker, darker, darker until you get to the very edge, which is the darkest. That is super easy to do. It's just training your mind and your eye to do it without having to think about it. So it will come. As you're doing these over and over, it will come to you. So either one of those things work when you're trying to get a very, very thin, dark line. Either, like I said, one, you can come up against it with another color and that will thin that line down, or two, you can come up against it and blend it and just leave the very, very edge of it black or dark gray or whatever color you're using. But those variations in color is what's going to give you such a good feel for a roundness on your object. With the nose, I mix baby pink and camel. It gives you that little fleshy color. I go back in with either engine red or cardinal red, and I used cardinal red on this one. And that's where you're going to get all your shadowing along the bottom of the nose. And again, you want the darkest against the bottom, and then you're going to come up with it and it's going to go lighter. This nose was pretty wet, so sometimes when it's real wet like that, it blends too much and you have to just keep adding that red until you get that difference in color, and then you can really see the shadow there. When you're doing that nose, make sure you're always painting in that circular motion. Anything straight across is going to leave a line, and you don't ever want a line in something that's that round. And then once you get that dark in the bottom, you're going to take white on the end of your brush. You're going to get it very, very wet, and you're just barely going to apply it to up where that highlight is. And it'll start to blend, it'll start to mix. And you can go back in and you can just continue to blend until you're able to step back and look at it, and you'll be able to really see that there's a defined blending there. There is the lightness up on the very top of the nose where it's getting the highlight, and then the shadowing underneath. So the little hat is the darker pink that I used, and I just brought in some of that baby pink to try to put the highlight on it where there's going to be some ripples in that hat. You know, when you put a hat on something and you've got this big old nose, try to picture that, you know, the nose is kind of pushing that hat up a little bit and making a ripple right above it. Because you're trying to get that hat down real low, but the nose is in the way. Now, if you need to shadow that hat right there above the nose, and I did want to shadow it, then I just bring in some more of the Cardinal red, and that's what I'm doing here. I also put a little bit of that Cardinal red up above the highlight of the that bottom crease on that hat. And then you want it right below the ears, because the ears are casting a shadow right there. You know, those are big ears. So really the only place that you're going to see the highlight and you're going to see any lightness on that hat is going to be right there between the ears, where it's where the light is going to be able to shine through. Otherwise those ears are going to shadow it. And then I took the same red and I went around the bottom of the nose, and that just gives you a nice defined edge of that nose, and that it's going around, it's going back around towards the face, and it's getting dark. Now, I am using just the white and the black for the most part to do his whiskers. And you will see as I'm doing these how I underestimated how rough that rock was. And this is the kind of detail that I'm talking about when I say there are times when a flat rock really does make life a little bit easier. A nice, smooth, I guess I should say, rock does make life easier when you're putting in detail. Now I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew how I wanted those whiskers, but I was having so much trouble getting the paint to cover the rock that I had to put in more white than I really wanted. The rock was such a dark rock that I was able to come back and put some black in it and pull away from some of that white. But initially I was stuck trying to cover that rock with enough paint to fill in all the divots and the creases so that I could get some some smooth hair-like whiskers. If you're using natural rocks, you're never going to have the perfect rock. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have a rock with a break on the side, or like this one, you're going to have an area on the rock that's got a lot of divots and creases and little holes. You may have a rock with some sandstone in it that winds up absorbing your paint real heavily. You're going to have something. That's just natural rocks. So if you are working with natural rocks, you have to find ways to fix things as you're working on them, as you come across them, because it's not always going to be the same. There's going to be different things come up as you're working with different rocks and different paintings, and you just have to figure out a way to make it work. So with this one, again, I did not want to have to put so much white paint down, but it was out of my control, because once I started putting those whiskers in, I realized how very rough it was, that I wasn't going to be able to get that smooth whisker look without covering it with paint. So the options were to toss the rock and try again on a separate rock, something that was smoother, or go back in with some dark behind it and start whittling away at the white so that all you see is the white and not the shadow behind it, which was pulling some of that white off of that rock. But in doing so, I was still able to fill the crevices and the creases enough on the rock to smooth it out a little bit, so that I did have a chance to put in some very, very tiny wisps of whisker and wisps of hair down on the little beard. In the end, I was able to do that. So when you're working with natural rocks, just remember, you may come across a different problem, or you may come across the same problem. You just got to figure out how to fix it. And it's always, for me, it's always something different. Either the rock just it's not working for the picture, or the texture, the color. It could be most anything. And I don't want to throw away all the rocks that aren't working. It would be the majority of them. So instead, I would rather be able to find a way to back it back down and still make it work. And you'll see, I wind up putting a lot more black in it. Even after I thought I was finished with it. I sat it on my desk for a day and a half, and I still felt like it was too bushy. So I went back in and took a little more of that beard out. Now with the teeth, you're going to want to put your whiskers in and your beard. Get it fairly close to being done before you start those teeth, because the teeth are going to lay over the beard. The whiskers lay to the side of the teeth, but then before you're done, you're going to put a small amount of whiskers over the front edge of those teeth, and you're going to make that blend in with those other long whiskers. So I just went in and put in white. You're gonna have to shadow these because you've got so much hair and so many whiskers. So you can use gray to shadow it, and then just a teeny tiny bit of black to go around the edge and make sure that you have those little edges completely defined before you finish. The problem is you got to make sure you keep those teeth as white as possible, because you've got so much white and black in that beard anyways and in the whiskers. The only thing that's really going to make those teeth stand out is going to be, you know, the stark white and the stark black around the edges, and then the shading's gonna, you know, it's gonna kind of blend. So you got to be careful with it, but you do have to have a little bit of shading on those teeth, especially right at the top and around the edges at the bottom. And that gives it a bit of a curvature look. And you've got so much black and white on this. I do have one other suggestion, and that is something that I do relatively often. I'll finish a painting and I'll walk away from it a day, for at least a day. And then I'll come back, and that way I can look at it really objectively. I can look at it new, you know, that I haven't been staring at it for the last hour trying to get in, you know, all my colors. And then you can go back and you can do a little touch up. And if you're running several projects, like I do, I have at least 3 or 4 projects at a time running. That's not a hard thing to do. You can put it aside and work on other things, and then you can always come back. But it does really help to get your eyes off of it, especially when you're using the same colors over and over. Or if you just feel like something's not working, that's another great time to walk away from it and come back. I really worked on that shadow on that hat because I really wanted those deep creases to show. And sometimes when you're blending, you blend out the stuff that you're trying to put in. So, you know, putting it in a couple of times, sometimes that's what you got to do. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about this. Let me know, you know, if there's something that you would do differently or something. I always love hearing what people want to see done next. So if there are things that you specifically want to see, please leave a message. I have somebody leave them a comment not too long ago that they wanted to see a seagull. So I've been looking at some seagulls, and I've never done one, but that may be something on my list to do here in the near future. So leave me some comments on that. And then when I was working this beard, I was having trouble being able to get the beard to differentiate from the whiskers without getting it, just making it too crazy. So what I did was I wound up trying to differentiate between the two as much as I possibly could. And then that's when I set it aside to let it sit for a couple of days. And you'll see in the finished product, I actually went in, and I don't have this on video, but I just went in and I took the black and I took out a few of those whiskers. I felt like the edges of those ears, I was kind of not getting a very crisp color with it, with the white. So I really wanted it to stand out, and that's why I went back in with a little bit of black and lined that. Okay, guys, here it is. And you can see I took out a few of those whiskers, and it looks much better that way. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you try this. I'd love to hear back from you if you do try it. And I hope you enjoy this. So come back again in about 10 days and we should have a new video. And don't forget to please subscribe and leave a comment under this video so you can be in the drawing. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in about 10 days. Bye.